Our mission is love. Our vision is love. Jamaicans for justice. The people's champion, champion, champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, the people demand. Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Justice. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Jackson, Executive Director of JFJ. Now, Jade Williams, our attorney at law, policy research and advocacy manager. She is actually in Westmoreland at the Mario Dean trial that took place this morning. So I will be flying solo. And the topic that we're going to be discussing is the way forward, ending gender-based violence in Jamaica. So as is customary, we're just going to be going through the week that was and just giving you a little bit of an update. Now, I just want to say before I start though, thank you so much for those who continue to lend support and those who listen via the YouTube chat, who actively participate, and of course those who are listening via radio and also via the JFJ YouTube platform. Thank you so much. I made mention of the Mario Dean trial that we know finally after 10 years the trial has begun. And this morning in court, the witness for the prosecution, which is an officer, a law enforcement officer, he did not make it to court today. I believe he is ill. So the matter had to be adjourned until tomorrow morning. We expect to hear his statement continuing, because remember he had started giving testimony from last Friday, and that would continue tomorrow. The matter had to be adjourned again because he was ill. So these things will happen during the course of the trial. But again, we do expect and hope that the matter can fully be heard and be finalized within the anticipated 1 month period that Justice Day had made a commitment or intention to have done. So what we will do on our social media pages is just to give an update each day of what is happening for the trial so that we can break things down for the public. One of the things, and I don't want to preempt anything, of course, for the trial, but one of the witnesses died. That is a matter of public record. And, I just want to say this sort of delay can lead to these, occurrences where witnesses die, move away, and so on. And obviously, we hope that there will be no adverse effect or impact on the trial that is underway. But just from a general perspective, I just felt it important to highlight that to the listeners, to the public, so that you can join us in advocacy generally about how we can improve and strengthen and move towards real justice reform in the country. And we see some efforts being taken with the backlogs and so on being reduced. But, we have to get to a stage wherein trial can commence within a year after someone has been charged. I know Justice Minister, the Honorable Delroy Chuck, had made an intention that is something that he would want to get done. A trial commencing within a year, my apologies, of an accused being charged. Because again, the accused, they have a right to a fair trial. And of course, the victim and their family, they do want to ensure that a matter goes before the court to hear the evidence and a just outcome can be so realized. So these are the things that we would want to continue to be strengthened in our justice system in Jamaica. On March 8th, just to move away from that topic, on March 8th, we know that we had the celebration for International Women's Day. It's something that is celebrated globally. And, I looked at several social media pages across different organizations in different sectors would make posts celebrating International Women's Day, and it is needed. But I saw a friend and colleague made a post on social media, on X, and I can't help but agree that we need to get to a stage wherein when we make posts on International Women's Day or other international recognition days, it's not one that is performative. So, in other words, we take pictures of the female employees that we have and we say Happy International Women's Day. But what exactly are we doing within our respective sectors, within our places of employment, to ensure that we're really advancing gender equality in our society? We know that we have more female managers, but what exactly are we doing to ensure that there is equality when it comes to compensation, closing that wage gap disparity that exists, ensuring that we have laws that really protect both sexes but recognizing the vulnerability of women? How many companies are in adherence with the Sexual Harassment Act? What exactly are we doing within the sectors to ensure that we are really pushing and advancing gender equality in our society? So yes, the recognition posts on social media, they're important and they're nice, but we have to move beyond that kind of performative nature to really ensuring that in our respective spaces, we have real changes that we're advancing in our society. And that is why we have this topic for discussion today, and we're going to be joined by Dr. Dale Bean, who is the head of the Institute of Gender and Development Studies at the Mona University. So, Mona Unit. So, when we have this discussion, I want us to listen keenly to get a sense of where we are in our society. We know that Jamaica has made real advancements. We have the highest percentage of women in our parliament. We've had our first prime minister already, where other countries are still trying to get there. We know that we have a national strategic plan that deals with gender equality issues. We heard from the Minister of Culture, the Honorable Olivia Babsy Grange, that the Sexual Harassment Tribunal has officially been convened, approved by Cabinet, and we saw the names listed there. So we're making some strides here in Jamaica. But we're going to be talking to Dr. Bean to really understand where are the gaps, how far more do we need to go to close gender equality gaps in our country. So we're going to be joined by her in short order. But before we get there, let us just go with the trivia. And the trivia for today is, in what year did Jamaica ratify the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women? That's CEDAW Convention. We signed and ratified, and the question is, in what year did Jamaica ratify the CEDAW? That's the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. In what year did we ratify that convention? And regarding our Did You Know? This is a long one, Tasha, our communications person at JFJ. I won't be reading everything, but just to indicate that you have some key stats that I encourage people to know. So in 2023, the Jamaica Gender Assessment found that 1 in every 4 women in Jamaica has experienced physical violence from a male partner. 63% of Jamaican women who experienced violence from a partner did not seek help. That is quite instructive. And women who started living with their partner at a younger age are more likely to experience intimate partner physical violence. So it's just to be aware that matters of gender-based violence, these are real issues, and we're going to be talking about that with Dr. Dale Bean in short order. I think I'm going to ask the technical support for a break because my voice is going, so I may need to take an early break so I can rest it for a minute and then we pick up, please.
Hey there, commuters, big news! Your JUTC Smart Fare cards are here! It's time to swap out those old Smarter cards and step into the future of easy, efficient travel. We know transitions take time, but let's get started. Here's how. Grab your Smarter card and your ID. Bring it to any JUTC ticket office. We will then switch you to a Smart Fare card. Top up and voila! Your brand new Smart Fare card is ready to roll. No stress. Your balance moves with you to your sleek, upgraded Smart Fare card. So, out with the old, in with the new. Right, with Smart Fare.
Tune in to Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. Stay ahead of the curve with our cutting-edge reporting and accurate breaking news coverage.
We are having an earthquake. Oh, God.
Hear it here first on Nationwide 90 FM. Tune in, turn up the volume, and listen. We bring a mix of news, entertainment, and sports to your lives.
Nationwide 90 FM's live and continuous coverage of the World Championships in Budapest, Hungary.
News and discussions week mornings.
Coming up in the news at 6 for this morning.
Entertainment in the afternoons, then news again in the evenings.
Nationwide news at this hour, fired.
Also, tune into the entertainment and sports shows in the nights and on the weekends.
It is Boy Things After Dark right here on Nationwide 90 FM.
Everything is news, from current affairs and entertainment to sports, business, and other categories.
Nationwide 90 FM. This is Beanie Man. Give it to them. Zaga, Zen.
From every whisper to every commotion.
That's rubbish. The KSAMC cannot investigate itself.
Every news story unfolds here first at Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. Every sound is a story, and every story we share is news.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. Before I get into the serious discussion, I see Annie Smith asking our usual winner, news commentator, to give her a chance this week. I'm not sure if she did or she won the trivia already. But Tasha, you're here with me, and Tasha will be helping out because my voice is going in and out. But just to quickly go through some of the discussion points before we bring in our guest. We know that in Jamaica we have entrenched norms and rigid gender roles. From very early on, we know that we start telling, once you have a baby girl, it's the pink, a boy, it's the blue, and so on. So we perpetuate this type of cycle of gender roles in Jamaica globally. And the question is, what effects or impact does that have in terms of how we socialize our children into some of the harmful norms that we see in our society? The state is making good efforts, one could say, because you do have a 10-year National Strategic Action Plan that was done in 2017. And there are some amendments that we have been calling for to the Domestic Violence Act. There were some minor amendments that were made last year. I think they came into effect in January of this year. But there needs to be more. But let's
January of 2024.
2024.
Yeah, January
Okay.
22nd, 2024.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. But let's listen to a clip from the Minister, Olivia Babsy-Grange, in terms of a commitment that she had made as far back as July 6, 2021. We don't have that clip? All right, but that clip was basically a commitment from the minister indicating that there would be a significant and comprehensive overhaul of the Domestic Violence Act. And as I just stated, there were some minor amendments that were made in November of 2023 that included, for example, finally increasing the fines for the protection order if you breach it from $10,000 to, I believe, it was $1 million or $1 million. And there are some other things that were done, very minor amendments, but we have been saying, listen, this thing has been dragging for far too long. Let's move with the changes. There was a joint select committee that was convened. That committee met only twice. JFJ, we wrote to the minister asking for a status update. respectfully noting our concern that here it is that we have been waiting for a while. The Joint Select Committee finally convened, only met twice. What exactly is happening? No response has been provided since date, so that is a challenge. But let's get into the discussion. We are joined by Dr. Dela Bean, who is the head of the Institute of Gender and Development Studies. Good afternoon, Dela. How are you?
Good afternoon. I am well. How are you doing?
I am well, thank you so much. My voice isn't as good, so I'm joined.
Sounds quite strong to me.
Oh, really? No, it's in and out. But I'm joined by Tashwa James, our digital media officer, who will be assisting with the interview.
Sure, no problem.
Good day, Dr. Bean.
Good day.
But from where you sit, Dr. Bean, can you just indicate just generally how you feel about the state of where we are regarding gender-based violence in Jamaica?
Oh, how do I feel? Well, it's as you said, I think in the previous segment, it's very heartening that there are so many initiatives on so many levels. There are policy initiatives, there are legal initiatives, there are persons in the NGO, CSO community that are doing so much work. We have entities like the IGDS that have been doing sensitization and research for decades. So there really is no shortage of work, and I do think that the work we have been able to do at the various levels and sectors throughout society has to be recognized, which is why for Women's Month and Women's Day, the idea is to celebrate and accelerate, because we do have to celebrate where we have come. But as you've also said, look like the voice thing is spreading. as you've also said, it's really troubling, the real endemic, very deep systemic issues that we have with gendered violence in this country. And I mean, it is across the globe as well, but, you have to start at home. And so for those of us who work in the area, who have to interact with persons every day who are victim survivors or who have been harmed by gendered violence, it is always harrowing. It's never easy, and, all our lives have been touched in some way by this scourge and this epidemic of violence that we have. So it's on the one hand, it is hopeful that there's much being done, but on the other hand, if we have one person who is a victim of this, it really just breaks the heart. So I think that is, to say how I feel, that's how I feel.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bean. So we're going to backtrack here and go into defining gender-based violence. Can you provide us with the things that would encapsulate what gender-based violence is?
Sure. So gender violence is it's a violent act that is perpetrated because of a person's gender. And it is wide and it is broad-based. So when we think of gender-based violence, we tend to think first of physical violence. This would be, and we tend to think of women as the survivors or victims of violence. Certainly from research, we know that men are also victims of gender-based violence. We know that persons of various gender and sexual identities are also victims of gender-based violence. But the first set of people we tend to think of when we think of GBV, we think of women and girls, because unfortunately the greatest representation of victims tends to be women and girls globally and in our region and in our country. Mm-hmm. When we think of the types of acts that are incorporated under gender-based violence, we think of physical violence. So these are the hits, the slaps, the kicks, anything physical, burning, any sort of violence that has a physical manifestation. We also have the category of emotional violence. So these are, you may not be physically harmed, but you are humiliated. Mm-hmm. You are, there's frequent fight, quarreling, name calling, bullying of any kind. That can be kind of under the umbrella of emotional violence. We also have to think, especially in our modern society, of the category of cyber-related violence. This is where we do, again, things that cause emotional harm through the internet, stalking via social media, sometimes revenge, So, you may be in a relationship with someone, you share intimate pictures, the relationship ends, these pictures are now sent out without your consent. So all of those things that happen because of that cyberspace, or as the medium being, through social media and so on, we have to think about that as well. And then there are other things like the cultural practices. We tend to not think of it in Jamaica because when we think of harmful cultural practices, we tend to think of things like genital cutting or honor killing, wife burning, and we tend to not think of it for our region. But we do have examples of cultural norms leading to different types of violence here. And then the final one I'll speak about, again, there are many others, is financial. And sometimes we don't tend to think of the fact that finances can be used as a way to control, to manipulate, to harm, and it may encompass all the others. So it may also be emotional violence, So there's a lot of mixing and intersection between and among the violence types, but these are the types of things that we think of when we think of gender-based violence.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Bean. And just to comment on the financial abuse, being an avid user of social media and digital media being a part of my professional portfolio, what you find online sometimes is that there's this culture regionally of somewhat shaming women for being financially dependent on men generally. Do you think this might, be a deterrent, or this might contribute to these high statistics in women not reporting these forms of abuse?
You mean specifically regarding financial abuse?
Yes, the culture of shaming women for being, being financially dependent on any form of man or on men in any way.
Well, I think there's a general culture of victim blaming for all types of violence. So it's really not only limited to the financial type. So, we are very quick to say if someone is sexually assaulted, where were you? What were you wearing? Why did you not go with a friend? What were you doing there? These are the types of these questions that we have of persons who are harmed by violence. We tend to want to know, what did you do to contribute to the violence that happened to you? And so there is a general culture of shame and so on. So I'm not sure that we would want to limit it to just the issue of financial violence, but certainly the fact that we tend to shame victims of violence is really, really problematic. And then, as you have said, there are cultural expectations. So the concept of gender-based violence or any type of violence really can't thrive if the society is not complicit in some way. And one of the ways that the society is complicit is over silence. It's in some cases victim blaming, as I've said. In some cases, keeping silent, just turning the other cheek, looking away, just saying, "Oh, this is man and woman business," and just moving on with life. So there are many things as a society that we do that really don't help to stem the tide of gendered violence. It tends to continue it more than end it. So yes, the cultural expectations we have of women and men certainly contributes to gendered violence.
I just heard you said the line, "and of men." And I'm not sure if you could clarify for our listeners two things. What exactly is meant by that? So, for example, when we socialize our boys to take care of their partner in that way, it's your role, you're the man of the house. How does that lead to the type of violence that we're seeing in society?
Yes, it can happen in many ways. So we do have an ideology of a male breadwinner, right, as an ideal for our family structures. And this is in and of itself may not be problematic, but in an economy and a society where men are not always granted those opportunities to earn at a level that they believe will be able to do that, it leads to psychological strain, right? We also have the issue too of more and more women either increasing in educational opportunities or just being really good financial managers and doing, entrepreneurship, various things that women are involved in, and many women are bigger income earners than perhaps the men in their lives. And so you also find that it clashes with the ultimate expectation that we have of men as providers. And we do see, in fact, I always remember an example of the IGDS undertaking a project in one of our rural areas with rural women, and it was to help these women, increase their market reach and marketability of their products, cottage products. And we found that at the end of the project, there was an increase in gender violence in those households because the women were then empowered to be earning more and bringing in more, and the men felt left behind. Whether they were left behind or not is a different argument. But the perception was that the women were getting the assistance and the men were not getting similar. So there are many ways in which the way we socialize boys and men and the way we socialize girls and women contributes to these serious cycles that we have of gendered violence. It's not only one thing, it's not only one contributing factor. And certainly socialization is part of it. And around the issues of provision and the responsibility that you have as a man is a very big part of what drives gendered violence.
Yeah. I had a brief conversation with the senior deputy director of prosecution, Jeremy Taylor, and this is a public statement that the members of the office of the DPP, they have said that in rural Jamaica, how they deal with the issue of rape, whether in reporting, contributing to evidence to ensure that the perpetrator, can face the courts, but even during the jury trials, there seemed to be a willingness to let the perpetrator go because of that victim blaming or just an acceptance. And we've had our experience at JFJ wherein I can't forget when a couple of our researchers said to me that, Ms. Jackson, when we asked the question about raising the age of consent to 18 or keeping it at 16, some of the respondents in rural Jamaica say, reduce it. Lower the age of consent because somehow the girl child is bad. And when it's at 16, then the men would likely face imprisonment. I'm not sure how, what is your take on the rural-urban differences and just generally the sociocultural norms?
Yeah, I really wouldn't be able to say if it's a rural-urban difference. We do see, we have had some studies done on rape and incest and so on by, critical staff of the IGDS over the years. I'm not sure what is, in terms of empirical research, I'm not sure what the current data would say. But like you, we have the anecdotal to work with, and the norms that we have. But what I'm trying to say is we know it happens for the rural area, but I'm not sure it doesn't happen in the urban. So that's the position I'm coming from. But I think we have a very negative relationship with sex, especially when it comes to access to women's bodies. We have a culture and a socialization that says to us that women's bodies are communally owned. And so little girls growing up in communities, as she turns a certain age and starts to develop puberty, her body now moves from being her own to the property of that community. Whether it is the property of the community to protect it or to harm, it now becomes outside of her own domain, right? So if you wear something that's revealing, or even if you don't, once your body has a certain look that's appealing and so on, it's now the community that has access, especially men. A lot of men believe that they have access to women's bodies. We also have to deal with the fact, too, that a lot of girls and women will also utilize that attention for various things, right? So it is a very complex issue. And as you said, this idea that girls are bad, right? So it is a very, very complicated issue, and it results in us not respecting and understanding that sex under a certain age cannot be consented to by male or female, and that even in one of the research papers that we had done by Dr. Lee Dunn, it's just a little sex. It's really not seen as anything big for a grown man to have sex with a 14-year-old in some communities. It's not understood as a criminal act.
Dr. Bean, I know you said you had to go, but can you stay with us for 5 more minutes? We have to take the break.
Yes, I can do 5 more minutes.
Thank you so much.
At the Jamaica Customs Agency, we care for our employees, customers, stakeholders, citizens, and our country. Customs cares. The temperature by the Jamaica Customs Agency is
30 degrees Celsius here in Kingston and 29 out west in Montego Bay.
Nationwide 90 FM, the station for the very latest in news and current affairs, will broadcast live the opening budget presentation by the Minister of Finance and the Public Service, the Honourable Favour Williams. On Tuesday, March 11, the Honourable Favour Williams will put forward the government's plans to finance the budget for 2025 to 2026. That's a live broadcast of Finance Minister the Honourable Favour Williams' opening budget presentation, Tuesday, March 11 from 3 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. on Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. Due to this live broadcast, the E-Zone will not be aired on Tuesday, March 11.
Welcome back to Let's Start Justice. We are discussing what exactly is the topic, Tashwa?
Yes.
I just had a memory.
The topic is the way forward and the ending gender-based violence in Jamaica. So we're here with Dr. Delia Bean she's the head of the Institute of Gender and Development Studies at the UWI Mona. And Dr. Bean's last topic of what we were unpacking is that there are certain entrenched cultural norms when it comes to gender and gender norms that perpetuate or enforce gender-based violence.
So, Dr. Bean, can you just pick up with the point that you were making before we went to the break?
Okay, right. Yeah, so basically what I was saying is that, as was nicely recapped, it's really just that there are some very harmful norms. And these norms come from culture. They, even we think of the fact that women and girls are seen as the safeguards against the wiles of men, right? It is a woman's responsibility to keep this male sex drive then in check. It's our responsibility. So you don't wear things that are too short. You don't overly, you're not overly flirty. You don't do anything because we accept as norm that men have a very high sex drive and we're wild. Men are just wilding out. And it is the responsibility of women to keep that in check. So that's part of the view that we have, and that can explain, Michaela, what you explained in court, that there's an assumption that men will act in a certain way. So there's a likelihood for a little more leniency there, but it's a woman who should have had responsibility over her body or stop this. There's some victim blaming involved because we have this view that women are the ones who are to take care of themselves where sex is concerned. Yeah. So all of these are challenges. It really isn't the only issue. When if we had a psychologist on, they would also give a psychological profile of people who are likely to commit these offenses. So certainly there are many disciplines and research, and much has gone into our understanding of abuse and so on. But culturally, those are things that we have to look at as well.
So before we close out, we only have a minute left with you. What is your last word in terms of to our listeners? How can we fix this problem in Jamaica? What would be your recommendation and suggestion?
We need to stop accepting ourselves as violent. And that's, I think, a big part of it. So gender violence is part of a national issue that we have, that we are a really violent society. We even love through violent ways. We are aggressive. We express ourselves in that sort of way. And I think the day that we start turning our attention towards better conflict resolution and this getting rid of this acceptance that we have, that we are naturally and inherently violent, and use that in our discipline of children and everything, I think we will be a lot better off. And also that that's one, but also raising our boys with a different understanding of women and girls. I think that's really, really critical too, because we are, as I said, we are aware through the research that the majority of gender-based violence victims are women. This does not take away from the fact that men are as well, but when we have the staggering numbers that 1 in 3 women will be victims of gendered violence in our country, we have to start there. We have to look at how we socialize our boys in the treatment of women and girls.
Yes, thank you so much. That was Dr. Dale Bean, the head of the IGDS. Thank you so much, Dr. Bean, and best of
You're
luck.
very welcome.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
You know, to our listeners, my apologies for this week and the voice, but I'm ably supported by Tashwa James, right? But I last week, Friday, I was privileged to moderate a panel discussion at the UA campus, but it was an event held by the UNDP So Just Project. And this panel discussion was focusing on, advancing gender equality through civil law. And civil law will touch on things, for example, harassment in the workplace, ensuring that you deal with things, private affair matters, or securing your individual rights within institutions. But the conversation was so practical. I think we should invite the individuals who were on that panel, experts. We had an individual from the Kingston Legal Aid Clinic, Legal Aid Council, Diane Watson, and we had Mrs. Carty from the Registrar General's Department. Just practical advice, and I will tell you, because it's a similar advice I saw in an article by Member of Parliament Lisa Hanna. Women, know your rights when it comes to property matters. Very important. Because you see several complaints that we're unable to accept at JFJ. For example, I was with this man for X number of years, but it was a visiting relationship between you and the man. You're not defined as spouse under law. So you have the properties of the Property of the Rights of Spouse Act, PROSA. How do you secure your rights in those situations? Be smart. You have a child for someone that you're not in a relationship with because the person may be married and so on. Be smart. Ensure that some properties will to the child. You are in love, you meet a nice person and you're in love and you have your property already, but you don't protect yourself in those instances because we're investing, because we love to love. So it was just practical examples that were being given, and I think, Tasha, we should invite the panelists on our show just to explain these things to the listeners, the importance of prenuptial agreements and so on, and protecting their property, as we're saying, because too many people fight over what we call deadlift in Jamaica. A lot of the domestic disputes that lead to murder charges, as we see in the news cycle, is because of things like these. So we just have to be smart, and as we're celebrating this, I see Minister Green saying some month-long celebration for International Women's Day.
Yes.
But these are the practical things I think we really do need to explain to listeners. Make your will, ensure you have a witness, sign off on the will, and so on. It's quite easy because it is best you do that rather than having your children from different, what's the word I should say, parents?
Yes, spouses.
Spouses, and so on, having that fight over a property that you left behind. What do you think?
Yes, I think that's a great idea. And I think culturally as a people too, we have this aversion from seeking certain legal protections because we think, it should stay in the family, or, you shouldn't get the state involved in certain things. But you have to think pragmatically, and you have to think about your long-term protection of your children.
Another thing, Tashwa, and I know you had it on your the script. The status of the Domestic Violence Act. And the fact that we've written to the minister, and there are some things happening, so we have to acknowledge the good work with finally putting together that the sexual harassment tribunal. Because if you are sexually harassed in your workplace, that is the tribunal that you would lodge certain appeal and complaints to, and they will assist. For example, you have Cadre folks on it. I don't want to call any other names because I don't remember all off the top of my head. But you have, qualified people of good reputation on it. But I feel like we've gotten to a stage where the Domestic Violence Act is simply not being given the type of attention that it needs to. And I really have to say that we have to do better. We can't have a joint select committee convened, but yet you've met only twice. And no word as to the status of that joint select committee. It's unacceptable in my opinion, really.
Yeah. And we're going almost to a year since the last meeting, because it was early last year that they had done their 2 meetings.
All right, I see the listeners, news commentators saying, thanks to the JFJ team and the support to Mercia Fraser, Mario Dean's mother. So as we segue, it has been weighing on my mind. I haven't been to court myself. You have, Jade has had, she went and she was there today, and other team members. We try to go daily. But as I listen to you all recounting Miss Fraser's testimony, it's just heartbreaking. And you can't imagine the pain.
10 years.
She's such a brave
yes.
champion. And the kind of effort in securing justice, she reminds me of Jenny Cameron. That was Michael Gale's mother.
Bless her soul.
Went all the way to IACHR, and what the public perhaps is not aware of. The push for justice is from the family.
Yes.
We're merely a conduit because we have the platform to speak on their behalf.
Yes.
But the strength of Miss Fraser, it's
beautiful. It's tragic that she has to have this strength. And just seeing her countenance in court and seeing her faith even, because I could remember the Sunday before the most recent hearing, her and I spoke, and she's like, okay, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm on my way to church. I have to, strengthen myself for tomorrow because it's not just me, it's me and God going in. And that was just so beautiful, because how do you maintain faith? How do you maintain strength? How do you maintain trust in the justice system after 10 years of seeing it just disregard your son's life, your son's justice this way? But she's a very strong woman, yes.
Yeah. So, we just continue to support Miss Fraser, and again, we hope that the matter can fully be heard within the 1 month period. Our team will continue to go, we can't speak too much about what is happening as not to, prejudice the outcome, because that you may have potential jurors listening in and so on. But it's just something, again, we want all of Jamaica just to be cognizant of, and to the bigger issue of how long these matters take. We have our legal team, and without spelling out which cases there were, they were, we wrote to Indicom for some case that are of interest to us, asking for an update. And, you may get the report saying that we have made a recommendation for charges to be laid. And the recommendation is made in 2025 or late 2024. But when you look at the incident date, it's 2-3 years before in some instances, because, again, you don't have the evidence to even make the recommendation in some instances, or to fully see the investigation complete. So, I really hope the public, we're listening, we're paying attention, because the state of justice in Jamaica, it needs some improvement. We take the break and then we pick up.
national budget is everybody's business because it impacts every Jamaican. The time brought to you by the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service is
15 minutes going up to 2 o'clock.
Come taste the beat with Tasty Cheese. This Easter, we're back bigger and better. The Tasty team will be at St. William Grand Park in downtown Kingston, Saturday, March 8th from 12 p.m. to 5 p.m. Save the date and don't be late. Come vibe to some Tasty Beats. You could win prizes and surprises. Special sale on Dairy Industries products. Other food and drink will also be on sale.
Tasty Beats with Tasty Cheese.
Big news! The Big Bite Food Safety Show now airs on Nationwide 90 FM with your host, Alison Richards, the Food Safety Girl. Join Alison every Tuesday from 1 to 2 p.m. as she serves up expert advice, tips, and insights on everything food safety. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and remember, food safety is everybody's business. Don't miss a bite of the action. Tuesdays at 1 p.m. only on Nationwide 90 FM, the new revolution in media. This week's episode takes you behind the shelves, ensuring your supermarket food is safe.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Justice. We're just having some discussions of, just broader justice reform areas. And we were just talking about the systemic issues that we see in cases like Mario Dean's. There is another family that we're supporting at JFJ, observing what is happening in court, advising the family on the status of their case. And that's Matthew Lee. Remember, Matthew Lee was killed in 2013, thereabout?
Yes.
And that trial comes up in July of this year. And again, I want us to pay attention to the timelines that we're talking about. Over a decade and still no justice for the family. So these are some systemic issues we really do need to deal with, because when we look on several of these matters, what happened as a result, Tashwa listeners, witnesses die, as I was saying earlier, they move away. In some instance, the police officers who are involved in the matters, they also move away, which means that no charges could be laid against them. So the matter was just stalled. These are some of the systemic issues that we see when we look at these cases, So it's just heartbreaking.
Yes.
Nakia Jackson, that was another one. That was before coroner's court. The coroner's court ruled that, listen, this is an open verdict. And that normally happens when the evidence could go either way. There's not certainty enough to have charges being recommended.
And that was another family too, whose advocacy helped us push and get the publicity and coverage for the case. The
family went international.
Yes.
Amnesty International as an organization helped with the messaging and the advocacy. So again, systemic delays based on what we have seen. You were saying?
Yes. No, I was just complimenting Nakia Jackson, and the family's role in helping push the advocacy and getting the word out there about what's happening with the case. But also, based on my observations being in or sitting in on Mario's case, is the jury and paneling. Like, I'm now coming to grips with how that system goes, and I'm seeing some of the issues that we've been, publicizing, we've been discussing in the media. And it's the time it takes to. It's the availability of jurors. I think last week we had one juror not showing up for one of the hearings and them having to find a replacement. So it's all these little systemic issues that we're seeing with the court system that's, exacerbating the delayed justice aspect of it.
You're right. And I listened to Jade Williams, who's out in West Carolina, but she's on her way back. And she was speaking on Nationwide at 5 regarding the juror issue. And civic participation is or the lack thereof. How, I don't know what is needed. Is it a case wherein we've gotten to that stage of just like where are the key clubs and the school systems where you teach children the importance of democratic participation? You want justice. What does justice mean and how you can be a part of that process? I don't know what else needs to be done. Is there a campaign that
there needs to be an attitude change, a whole social reform, and it's also observing the apathy too, and I don't think it comes from us not caring. I think it comes from the lack of education, not appreciating the seriousness of looking out for your fellow citizens and ensuring that the justice system is supporting them and giving them the justice they require. Because even I don't recall anything being, I'm not that far removed from the CSEC curriculum. I don't recall.
I was reminded I'm over 2 decades removed.
I'm just 15 years out of it. but there wasn't any any what you call it, any part of the syllabi that said that this is your responsibility as a juror and this is why you should take this responsibility seriously. I don't know if in your time it was
in my time
much better. When they update the syllabus every people. 5 years. in all fairness, But there was never any pressing upon us that these are your civic duties, these are your rights and responsibilities as a citizen of your country, and I think that needs to be pushed. And when we go out into the working world, also it needs to be a push because everybody perceives jury duty as just something that's pulling me out to work, and your co-workers sometimes, and I've had this experience where you guys are coaching how you're going to get out of jury duty when it is that you're in court. So we do need a shift. We need a cultural shift and appreciation for advocacy and for the judicial system and our role as citizens.
Yeah, completely agree. Because our Little Know Your Rights book that we have, I was reminded by a youngster that, listen, the information is good. I love it. But I'm not going to be reading that book unless, for example, it's a part of social studies. So I know that some high schools, they would explain to the youngsters, this is the structure of government. This is what the role of your member of parliament should be. Sometimes when I even listen to the pollsters, the political polls, I won't go into the content, but when you listen to the political polls and how we judge whether the prime minister or the leader of the opposition is working, I wonder if we even realize that we don't vote directly for our prime minister. A lot of people perhaps don't even realize that if they've never voted. So how do we have those types of information being given to our children a little bit more? Because it's beyond the jury issue for me. It's again just that acceptance and understanding of my civic responsibilities, knowing that getting the TRN, I have to tell my teen son that the TRN is not to get a driver's license or anything like that, it's to pay your taxes, right?
Which is also something that we need to learn because, boy, oh boy, taxes.
But it's real conversations we really do need to be having, not only with the youngsters, but adults who've moved beyond the formal educational system or institutions. Again, what is your role? What is your responsibility? How do you participate? You have the budget debates coming up.
Yes. Even understanding the different arms and branches of government to know what's happening in Parliament and who is who and who's doing what and what house is responsible for what.
And Bruce Golding, I remember when he was Prime Minister, he was pushing for the backbenchers, as you would be calling them, that they have a responsibility to their constituents and they should be speaking up more in the House. So it's a lot of things. But I was making the point that you have the budget debates coming up. How many people watch it? How many youngsters know about it? So it's I had pleasure watching it, but again, I don't know because my first degree is in political science, but I loved watching it over the years when I was younger. You see people carrying them basket and all kind of excitement to say how the cost of living higher because under one government and those types of things. But beyond the excitement, like last time you saw Dr. Nigel Clark talking about red card, and I was making the joke that you had the red card scenario, then you have the leader of the opposition speaking outside of parliament, but how do you get people involved and interested in these types of issues? Because it's not politics with the dirty meaning behind it.
No.
This is political participation, because this is how you see your fundamental rights and freedoms being realized in society. So I think much more is needed in this respect.
And it has to start from the primary level. Like it has to. We need our young people to be more zealous about what's happening within their governmental systems.
Yeah, and as we're talking, Tashwa, one of the things I am hoping we can have discussed on our program, it's election time. The politics excitement is going to be there. I think we have a responsibility to strengthen the public discourse that is happening by emphasizing and educating around the political rights that we have as citizens and encouraging people to participate. So, for example, what do I mean by, free and fair elections? What are some of the strengths, the areas to go when it comes to the Electoral Commission of Jamaica? Campaign financing laws, you can start accepting money now. But what are some of the gaps with campaign financing laws in Jamaica and so on? I think we have a duty here at GFJ in the next coming months. I'm having a brain freeze again.
Yes, next coming
September
months. It's when election is due. Early September.
We need to do some public education in this respect. Just breaking down some of these political participation issues, because we need some purple on our fingers. I believe.
Yes,
and
there is a high voter apathy. Yes.
Yeah, and people say, no, it's not apathy, it's because people are sending a signal that we're not interested in either political party. I think both are true, because I think we're too blissfully unaware, some of us, and if you're deciding not to vote, it should be from an informed perspective, where I'm deciding not to vote because I'm sending a signal to both political parties. And remember, you have more than one in Jamaica. We just have a two-party political system. So I think we need a lot more in this respect to be done, and so on. And as you've seen the chat, it's some comments about the issues. Yes, I say Marvelous Marvin, saying despite the surmountable challenges, Mario Dean's mom ride out the storm. I applaud her and have great respect. I say a prayer for her every time her case is called up. We echo that. My voice going again. I'm not sure if I want to read two more. Tasha.
Okay. I see news commentators saying that most persons wait for high points or reviews from political commentators. Yes, I think we do have an aversion to, and I guess it comes from like the apprehension about if you know what you're talking about. So there's an aversion to wanting to make certain comments publicly about, politics and certain persons in power, because we always somehow make it political also. So your intent might just be to query or, question what's happening as a concerned citizen, but then it becomes political. And I think that also too contributes to the aversion to participating in civic matters.
I see a question here. Can you please explain why JFJ never comment on crime victims? Also, why don't JCF encourage criminals? Or I think that means JFJ. Let me quickly say that as a human rights organization, the work that we do is around keeping the state accountable. And if you join us next week, People's Conscience, I will explain the awesome power that the state has and the importance of human rights organization in state accountability. And the simple example we use, if gunman kick down your door, you call the police. But if it's the police or the state doing the violation, what are the systems that exist to keep them accountable. But that's where we have to leave it. I know you have who was the trivia? What was the trivia answer?
So the trivia answer is 1984, and Colleen Smith, you are our trivia winner for today. Congratulations, Miss Smith, and we'll be in touch.
All right, thank you so much. Have a good Monday. My name is Mikkel Jackson.
And I'm Tashwa James.
Bye-bye.
Jamaicans, by justice, the people's champion. Justice, justice for all. Justice under the law. Justice, Jamaica demand. Right to life, right to liberty. Out of many we are one in a Jamaica. Make it a better place for the boys and girls. Created equal by the creator. For equal rights and opportunities. No to unlawful detention and police brutalization. Class, gender, race or religion. We not tolerate discrimination.
To join the fight against injustice, contact us at 755-4524 or Jamaicans4Justice.org.
The people's champion.
Coveside Concert Series presents Timeless. It happens on March 29 at Plantation Cove, St. Anne, featuring international superstar Dionne Warwick and more stars Myrna Hague, Queen Marcia Griffiths, and Dwayne Stevens. Timeless, March 29. Showtime is 8 p.m. and tickets are now available at Fesco, Fontana Pharmacy, Plantation Smokehouse, and online at coveside.aitix.com.
It's Monday, get over your blues.